Barcelona Day 2 exposed a quiet but deeply revealing contrast in approaches. Because while some teams were busy piling on laps to fill spreadsheets and others were still searching for reassurance, Red Bull and Max Verstappen operated from a position that looked uncomfortably assured. This was Verstappen's first proper outing in the RB22 during this test, and yet there was no sense of introduction, no visible acclimatization phase, and no sign that either driver or car were feeling their way through unfamiliar territory. Conditions were unstable, the dry window was short, and the track never offered a clean, consistent rhythm, but Verstappen still emerged as the fastest driver of the day, and the significance of that result had very little to do with the stopwatch. What mattered was how it happened. The RB22 never appeared to step outside its operating range, never demanded exaggerated inputs, and never gave the impression that performance was being extracted through force or compromise. Red Bull's run plan looked almost understated to the point of arrogance, but understatement at the start of a new regulation cycle usually points to clarity rather than caution. The car looked immediately usable, predictable, and narrow in its behavior window, exactly the characteristics teams typically spend weeks trying to unlock. Even the late disruption caused by Isaac Hadjar's afternoon crash failed to alter the broader picture that had already been established in the morning. By then, Red Bull had taken what it wanted from Verstappen's run, and everything else became secondary. If there is a correct way to read early testing signals, Barcelona Day 2 offered one, and it deserves closer attention because the raw data alone tells only part of the story. Verstappen's best lap, a 1 minute 19.578, came during the brief dry phase of the morning before rain closed the door on meaningful performance running. And while it was comfortably quicker than anything Ferrari managed under similar conditions, the comparison is less important than the intent behind it. Charles Leclerc circulated in the low 1 minute 20s and ultimately recorded a 1 minute 20.844, but Ferrari's focus was clearly elsewhere. Verstappen completed just 27 laps in total, while Leclerc logged 66, a disparity that would normally act as a warning against drawing conclusions. But Formula One testing is not about symmetry or fairness, it is about what teams choose to prioritize, and on day 2 the priorities could not have been more different. Ferrari was chasing mileage, system validation, and operational confidence, openly admitting that performance was not the objective. Leclerc later explained that the day was about confirming that everything worked as expected on a car packed with new systems, and from that perspective Ferrari achieved what it set out to do. Red Bull, however, did not behave like a team still checking fundamentals. Verstappen's run was short, tightly structured, and decisive. The lap time arrived without the usual visual markers of a driver pushing the limit in a test environment. There were no exaggerated corrections, no visible struggle for traction, no sense that the car needed to be managed around weaknesses. The RB22 looked settled almost immediately, and that matters because this is not a simple evolution year. The 2026 regulations represent a full reset, introducing a new aerodynamic framework and a radically revised power unit that places far greater emphasis on electrical deployment and energy management. In most regulation resets, teams spend the opening phase simply trying to locate the car's natural operating window. The fact that Verstappen appeared to arrive already inside that window is what gives day 2 its weight. That impression becomes even stronger when considering that Verstappen did not run at all on day 1. Red Bull handed the entire opening day to Isaac Hadjar, who topped the timesheets with a 1 minute 18.835 in far more favorable conditions, a decision that already hinted at a team unconcerned about establishing an early reference with its lead driver. When Verstappen finally climbed into the car on Tuesday morning, there was no bedding in phase, no gradual build-up, just immediate reference setting. The only interruption came when Verstappen briefly ran wide into the gravel at turn 5 on his outlap, triggering a short red flag. But crucially, there was no damage, no loss of momentum, and no disruption to the program. He returned to the track and delivered the lap Red Bull needed before weather conditions deteriorated beyond usefulness. By the time rain intensified and Verstappen stepped aside, Red Bull's priority work was already complete. Hadjar took over in the afternoon to gain experience in wet conditions, but that phase ended abruptly when he lost control at the final corner and hit the barriers, damaging the rear wing and bringing Red Bull's day to an early close. It was the first major accident of the test and naturally drew attention, yet from a technical standpoint it changed almost nothing. Hajar had already completed over 40 laps in the afternoon. Verstappen's data was safely banked, and Red Bull retained flexibility thanks to being the only team to run on both day 1 and day 2. Even questions about spare parts logistics and whether replacements would need to be flown in from the UK failed to alter the core takeaway from Tuesday morning. That takeaway gains further credibility when placed alongside the messaging coming from within Red Bull itself. Team principal Laurent Mekies has been unusually direct about the central role Verstappen plays in this new era, describing what he calls a triple advantage. Verstappen's commitment level, his sensitivity and feedback combined with what Mekies openly refers to as extra brain power, and his ability to guide development direction. With the increased complexity of the 2026 power units, particularly around energy deployment and system management, Mekies has emphasized that driver influence on performance will grow rather than shrink. Verstappen, he says, is involved in every discussion, every analysis, and every calculated risk. Barcelona Day 2 served as a practical demonstration of that philosophy. Verstappen was not simply extracting speed, he was validating Red Bull's simulations. The team did not need him to run long stints or explore extremes. It needed confirmation that the car behaved exactly where the models predicted and that it responded predictably to input. The lap time was merely the byproduct of that confirmation. This is where the contrast with Ferrari becomes informative rather than critical. Ferrari deliberately skipped day 1 and chose to begin its Barcelona running on Tuesday after completing a private shakedown at Fiorano, adopting a conservative, methodical approach that prioritized reliability and understanding. That strategy is entirely rational at this stage, but it also highlights the difference in posture. Ferrari was still asking questions. Red Bull appeared to be checking answers. Even Verstappen himself has been careful not to oversell the implications of early testing, repeatedly stressing that the scale of the regulation change makes it impossible to know where any team truly stands. He has spoken about the importance of simply completing laps and optimizing step by step, particularly given the magnitude of the power unit changes. There is no bravado in those words, but when they are paired with what was visible on track, a clear pattern emerges. Verstappen did not look like a driver exploring a new environment. He looked like a driver continuing a conversation that had already been extensively developed in simulation rooms and debriefs long before the car reached Barcelona. That continuity often proves decisive in the opening phase of a season. Early races are rarely won by the team with the most extreme concept. They are won by the team whose ideas work immediately. On day 2, the RB22 gave every impression of being immediately workable. None of this guarantees dominance, and plenty of caveats remain. Weather, fuel loads, run plans, and the absence of key rivals distort the picture. Mercedes, McLaren, and others chose not to run on Tuesday, leaving their true pace unknown, and even Red Bull's own data set remains incomplete due to rain-limiting correlation work later in the day. But testing is not about certainty, it is about probability, and Barcelona Day 2 nudged that probability in a very specific direction. The significance lies less in Verstappen topping the timesheets, and more in the lack of noise surrounding how he did it. In previous regulation resets, even the strongest teams have shown visible signs of experimentation and instability early on. Here, there was remarkably little of that. When a driver of Verstappen's caliber can step into a brand new car, complete fewer than 30 laps, and still establish the reference without visible strain, it suggests that the foundations are already doing much of the heavy lifting. Foundations set correctly are difficult to undermine quickly, and that reality frames the question now hanging over the rest of the test and the opening phase of the season. Was Barcelona Day 2 simply a well-managed test day that happened to favor Red Bull and Verstappen? Or was it the first visible indication that this new cycle is beginning from a familiar place, with Verstappen once again holding an advantage that is structural rather than situational? The grid will provide its answers soon enough, but for now the signal has been sent, quietly, efficiently, and without unnecessary drama.